You can take a look at that.
Be working now.
Hopefully now, everybody out in video land can hear us now.
Okay.
We're just on the consent calendar, everybody. Thanks for kind of staying with us. Okay, so we've got one item you're going to be abstaining from, but other than that, anything else? If not, we'll accept a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll motion to approve the consent calendar.
Is that a motion? Do we have a second?
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Here we go. Next up is staff communications, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We have some informational updates, but first I'll go to each of the department heads for updates. You want to go ahead?
Absolutely. Thank you. 3 items. The first, opening day for the baseball season is this Saturday, March 9th. Starts at 8 a.m. We have a presentation of colors by American Legion, 263, national anthem by a student in the school district, and then first pitch by Miss Escalon. And we have a guest MC as well. The mayor is.
There's a rumor I heard about that.
Is guest emceeing. So exciting day for the baseball softball season. Looking forward to that this Saturday at 8 a.m.
Weather reports looking like you're going to be nice for us so
It's
far?
holding out, I think.
I think we'll be okay.
It's holding out. 2 sort of related items, the traffic calming program, officially approved by the council. It is live on the website. We will be sending out a Facebook post. So anyone who has any traffic concerns can go through that process. We are also in our monthly reports for this department. We'll have all of the submitted projects or concerns that we receive. We will share with the council and the public through the monthly reports for this department. And with that, that's all I have.
Thank you.
All I have to say is that my staff is on fire. They took 2 guns off the street this last week. There's one off in a car, and the guy was carrying the gun on him. So props to them. That's all I have.
Thank you.
We got 2 small items. One is a correction from last week. Last week, Councilmember Walker asked on the street map why Burgundy wasn't on there, and I said because we hadn't crack sealed it yet. My guys were quick to tell me I was completely wrong the next morning, so I apologize. That did get added to the list. That was just an oversight on my part why I didn't get on there, but it will be added, so thanks for bringing that to our attention. Talked to Lion and Dawkins today with the orchards. They plan on mobilizing in this Wednesday, and we're working with them. They think they can get it done Thursday and Friday. If they don't start Thursday and Friday, then they're gonna wait till Monday, because with all this going on, last thing I do want is the orchard removal going on the same time opening day is going on. So we made sure to talk about that. So then you may see some work out Thursday or Friday, or it may be starting on Monday, but they will mobilize in Wednesday, and it only should take them a couple of days to get the one on Escalon below us. So that'll be taken care of here quickly.
Justin, did we let the adjacent property owner know?
I've called and left a couple messages. I haven't physically talked to them, but I have left them a few messages letting them know, but they haven't called me back. So I would assume they know as long as they're checking their messages.
Yeah, can we just make sure we give them a message and let them know that work's going to be happening?
Yeah, I can give another call for sure.
The ag commissioner had reached out as well, and so they had also reached out to the property owner.
And one more thing is next weekend on the 14th is the corned beef and cabbage at the community center. It's kind of our season of starting off all of our community center events and fun things going on over there. So everybody just be on the lookout if you're looking for something to do. We've got plenty going on here in the next few months at the community center. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, my informational items, Form 700s, we're coming up on that time of year. You should have received an email today. The state of California, FPPC has a website where they log in all of the Form 700s electronically. You have the option through that email to submit electronically if you'd like to do so, or you can submit paper copies, whichever one you're more comfortable with. They do need to be submitted to our office by April 2nd. So if you have any trouble filling out the forms or need any assistance with that, feel free to give me a call or let me know. But that web link should be set up to your email address, and you should be able to file online. And then receive a confirmation letting you know, and it will also let me know that you filed. So If you have any questions on that, let me know. Mid-year budget review is set for our next meeting on March 18th, and so we should have that item here. And Andy Heath, our financial consultant, will be presenting that item. And then I know in the past several weeks, we talked about the ballot box location here in the city. We have a meeting scheduled with the county after this next election to kind of get that all situated. And as soon as we get that situated, we'll bring our recommendation and or item to council. And the council can decide whether or not they want it located wherever the selected area is. So that item will be coming back to you as well. I am shooting for the meeting of the 18th for that item as well. So next meeting. And then last item I have was, I know that the council is aware, but it hasn't really been put out into the public, but I did put my letter of resignation in to the city. So my last day here will be April 14th. And so I just want to thank everybody for having me here. I've enjoyed working here over the last few years, and I was hoping not to cry, but I've really loved it here. But I've got some things I need to improve and make it easier on my family. So I miss you guys. And my last actual meeting will probably be next meeting, which is the 18th. So just to let you guys know. And that's it.
All right.
That's the worst I've cried so far.
Nothing wrong with that. We appreciate all that you've done for us.
Thank you.
Next up, matters presented from the audience. The public may address the city council on any item that is on the agenda at the time the item is called. The public may also address the city council on any item not on the agenda that is within the subject matter of the city of Escalon. Each speaker is limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. Unused time may not be yielded to another speaker. You may state your name and address for the record. However, it is not required. Due to state law, action will not be taken on an item that is not on the agenda, and except for brief responses, the council is prohibited from discussing any item not on the agenda. If it requires action, it will be referred to staff and/or placed on a future agenda. The determination of whether an item is within the subject matter of the city's discretionary decision made by the mayor. And with that, we open it up to the chambers for anybody here in the audience that would like to come up the podium and speak to something that's not on the agenda.
Mayor, council members, the reason I came down this evening is that I've got wind that our park decision is going to be made tonight possibly, and I just want to say that I think it's more important that you bring it back to the community before you move forward. I think we are owed that. We've showed a lot of interest and we've showed up to all the meetings, and I don't think we should be cut out of the final. So I think the transparency is very critical here, so do not pass that tonight without shoving it by the rest of us to look at it. While I'm here tonight, the other thing was we talked about the fields are finally getting the trees out, which is good news. And I wanted to talk a little bit about development. We talked about this before. We had that land coming on into Escalon on the corner of Brennan coming into town there on the north side. And I would hope that this council and this staff would think about the possibility of allowing septic tanks and new development there. And the reason for that is we don't have the funding for the underground plumbing and the lift station. So if we could do something where it lined up where after they got the plumbing in, we could somehow get past those and have a line that goes directly into the lift station. But I think it would help us a lot to get some development over there. That's one of the things we think we should consider. The other thing is our parks have the retention ponds. We should be drilling wells in those things, 40, 60 feet deep, dry wells. In Modesto, that's all they have. They don't have a separate system for rainwater. We need to have that in our parks to be regenerating our our water tables beneath us. We're pumping thousands and thousands of gallons into that river out there. That's insane. So I'd like us to think about that and maybe look into it. Who got the contract for the technical thing for this? I remember there was a big deal where you guys came down. Did we ever award that?
That's in the process of being reviewed right now, and then it will be put out for bid.
Okay, so it's going to come out for RFP?
Yeah, probably within the next 30 days.
Okay, and then the surface water treatment system. When was the last time we had an update on that? Did we ever find a funding source for the $13 to $15 million we need?
We'll have a quarterly update on that item. Is it next meeting?
April.
In our April meeting. We have quarterly
So we
updates.
basically haven't moved much further than we were the last time we talked about it. Because it needs to have a report telling us what this future plant, if we ever do it, is gonna cost us on our rates. It also should tell us how much water, we should have a hydrologist tell us how much water we got underneath this ground we're standing on. So we make smart decisions instead of bad ones. We spend a lot of money on a lot of research here, so it'd be nice to know where the hell we're at. I think that covers it, other than the water rates going up again. You know, I'd like to see some rationale in that. I mean, it's, my God, we gonna turn Escalon into like a desert, like Las Vegas, where everybody puts water in their lawns? If we're gonna make it so hard for them, that's what's gonna happen. It comes to choices between eating and watering your lawn. So we might wanna take a harder look at those water prices and find another cash cow for the system. I think that covers it. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm bringing up my one focused issue that I bring up every time during the public participation. That's the industry's participation or non-participation, as it is, in our water treatment upgrade. When I look at the minutes from February 5th, a month ago, we haven't gone anywhere with these people. We don't have any commitment with them. The plan that's been submitted theoretically to the state encompasses all of the requirements for those industries to deliver their waste to our system. I don't know why we're doing it. We don't have a commitment in writing and a system where we get their monies put in an account, local bank, with a city's name on it that will ensure their commitment to this project. You're 2 months away now from the permit for next year for these treatment plants, and then it'll be another year before you have any kind of hook. Let's be clear on this thing. Plans haven't changed, you're going with the Blackwater plan that was submitted here, I don't know, back in September, in front of you, to $40+ million. The majority of that is based on the requirements needed by these industries. There's no commitment from them. Why are we going forward with that? You know, we hear from Justin, oh, we're in talks with them, they understand. Who cares what they understand? It's time for the city to assert itself. What are we going to do? All we need to do is get our treatment plant up to speed for the domestic charge. We don't need the industries. They don't give us any tax revenue. They should have their own treatment systems out there and treat it all themselves. But they have the luxury of sending it to us, and we have no commitment from them. This is on you. This is an election year topic. I think you guys ought to, maybe you're not going to run again, but those of you that are should think very clearly about getting involved in this. Ed brought up the water. As I said, I'm going to stay focused on this one issue until staff and these industries give a firm commitment to our city and make sure that the ratepayers aren't going to be stuck with any kind of wastewater discharge from these industries. So I look forward to hearing from you people over the next, couple of meetings on what you want to be doing about it. Really want to be doing about it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we're going to close matters presented from the audience. Moved on to item number 4, public hearing. Consider an expenditure plan for the City of Escalon's fiscal year 24-25 Community Development Block Grant Program. French.
Thank you, Mayor. So items number 4 and 5 are similar public hearings for 2 different pots of money. So I'll go through one presentation, and I guess we can open up the public hearing and then go.
You can open one for both.
Okay.
Since they're so similar.
Good. So we will do both presentations, open up the public hearing for both, and then we'll have separate votes for each pot of money. So the 2 pots of money from the federal government, the first in item 4 is CDGB. It's Community Development Block Grant. These monies are primarily for improvements to infrastructure, but 15% of the monies that we receive each year go towards assistance of service groups. So we have historically provided these funds for county fair housing, emergency food bank, and Human Services Agency's Meals on Wheels program. We have the same recipients this year who have we do a call for projects, a NOFA, basically, a notice of funding availability. And we get applicants who want to utilize that funding. 11,000 of it is dedicated to those purposes. This year, as in last year and maybe prior years, the city is also seeking some funding to help those in the recreation department, so city residents who can't afford recreation programs. We have basically scholarships available, and we are recommending about $4,000 go towards that. So the other three I mentioned briefly, but San Joaquin Fair Housing, if I said Stanislaus before, my apologies. San Joaquin Fair Housing, $1,000 being requested for fair housing services to low and moderate income Escalon residents. This is to help address the needs of those with lower moderate income persons in finding housing, dealing with landlords, that type of thing. My time's up. You can vote now. Human Services Agency has a Meals on Wheels program that they offer to Escalon residents, primarily those homebound and 60 years or older. They're requesting $2,634. And then the Emergency Food Bank and Family Services of Stockton, San Joaquin is requesting $3,500. And this is for their mobile farmers market program. Basically, they go out and provide nutrition education, on-site cooking demonstrations for healthy food preparation for residents of this community. So those are the 4 recommendations that we have to utilize the $11,250, which is 15% of the total allocation that we receive. Now, the other component of that, the remaining $63,000, we can use for infrastructure projects. But as a federal program, it really is intended to go to disadvantaged communities. Historically, we have not had disadvantaged census blocks, and so we can't use that money sort of by right. The demographics are changing just slightly. The threshold for a disadvantaged community is increasing at the federal level, so we're getting to the point where we can start to use it. But staff is developing plans to ensure that we can utilize that money instead of kind of sending it back to the county, basically, and to the federal government through the county. So obviously we don't have plans ready for this round, but we are diligently working on plans to ensure we can use as much of that money as possible. So for that is number 4. Happy to pause here, just if there's any questions on that one.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Just real quickly, the distribution that we're doing, this looks very similar to last year. Is this pretty much on point with what we did the last several years?
Yes.
With the distribution of the funds that we are allowed to give out? Okay.
Yep,
So make sure there's no great changes for everybody to know that. Thanks.
So, Jalen, real quick, how are we advertising for groups to apply for the CDBG funds?
So we do, we mentioned, we do what's called a NOFA, a Notice of Funding Availability. You know, we put it on Facebook, we send it out through the website. That's primarily what we do.
I just, I appreciate the work that Fair Housing does and Meals on Wheels and the mobile farmers market, but I know for a fact that there are at least 3 food distribution programs within the city of Escalon. And I mean, while I appreciate what those county agencies are doing, if this money belongs to the city, did we reach out to those 3 groups and say, hey, we have these funds, can we help support your programs?
I think that's a fantastic suggestion. I don't know if that is something that we have historically done in the past, but it's absolutely something that we can look at improving in the coming years.
Well, is it too late to reach out to them for this year and see if we can use some of those funds this year?
I believe it is So my sense was, I mean, it's never too late, right? But my sense is, yes, we are coming up on the deadlines, but we can look into that further if the council so desires, to see if there is an opportunity to open it up a little bit further to those locally.
Oh, call me crazy, but I think that if we approached Escalon Strong, the Pentecostal Church of God, and Escalon Cares and said, hey, we have some grant funds, are you interested? They're probably not going to say no. So I think we owe it to those three groups.
And I don't know who has received okay, I think that's a good, I know at least one of those groups did receive it and missed the deadline. I don't know about the other two groups.
Okay.
So it does appear that the dollar amounts are there utilizing the 15% that's allocated for assistance programs. So essentially, if any of those other groups did decide to jump in there, ultimately that means we have to choose which other agency would not be receiving funding. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, including the recreation department. So yeah, we have maxed out the funding available that we have available. That's correct.
So how does that work with the additional 63,000 that you just mentioned?
They are sort of two different pots of money. The 15% identified in the staff report on page 2, it is for service groups. And it's sort of dedicated to those with low income. The other pot of money is more for infrastructure, infrastructure improvement, sidewalks, water lines, sewer lines, those types of things in disadvantaged communities.
We don't currently qualify or have.
We don't currently qualify, and there is a process where we can income survey residents, and if we get a certain amount, then it's kind of like the back door to qualify, but we do not automatically qualify. We don't have a census tract that automatically qualifies.
Would that include generators as well, or in that infrastructure?
I would have to look into a generator in particular, but my sense is no, that would not be an eligible cost.
Thanks.
We ever received an audited amount from Meals on Wheels, the Mobile's Farmers Market, and Fair Housing Program to ensure that they're using all of the funds that we're providing to them through the CDBG funds?
Yeah, they provide reports to us and to the county.
So back to what Councilman Engel mentioned, if we open it up to those three groups, then we would have to distribute these funds around, or basically pick how we wanted to distribute them. Is that correct?
Yeah, so, right, everyone would either get a thinner slice, or you would have de facto, a group or one entity who did not receive funding.
Any other questions up here on item 4 before we move to 5?
Another question. How does the Meals on Wheels program through the Human Services Agency differ than the senior lunch program currently put on by Karen Corey? Does anybody know?
Yeah, so the Meals on Wheels sounds like it goes to those who are more homebound. The senior lunch program is those who are out and about and want to have that camaraderie with
So
others.
two different programs.
Two different programs.
The public hearing will be open after we review all the items on 4 and 5, then we'll open up the public hearing as a group for both of them.
So I have a question. So these organizations that are applying for help with their food distribution, and if they wanted some sort of improvement on their infrastructure, would they be able to qualify for the infrastructure portion of this to be allocated to them as well? Since they would qualify for low-income food service, they would be low-income infrastructure. Is that?
I don't know what you mean by infrastructure in that question.
Okay.
But predominantly it's for city infrastructure, your water, sewer, storm, sidewalks, streets, in low-income areas to help improve, kind of the quality of life in those areas physically.
Okay, so public
Yeah,
infrastructure.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So we can go ahead and move to number 5 then, Mr. Rich. We're good? Okay. Yep, let's go to 5 then. Let's see what's up on with number 5 then. Is that Mr. French, or do we go to the public hearing?
All right.
Yep, number 5.
Number 5.
Okay, moving on. So similar, well, it's from the federal government, different department, and these are home funds. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. And it's primarily to assist low and moderate income persons receive decent housing and suitable living environment. So there's 2 different programs here that are offered. GAP loan program, which is a deferred down payment assistance of up to 20% or $15,000 of the sale price. So it's really intended for those who can't quite afford, a home or the down payment, and it is an offer, is a deferred down payment assistance program for those individuals. And then the other is a home rehabilitation program. So things like, new roofing, solar, electricity, plumbing, or flooring upgrades to improve the quality of housing in the rehabilitation program. So the city receives a number of funds each year, about $7,000, and we can keep 3 years worth. We do not have a lot of use of this program. We haven't had a GAP user since 2010, and we haven't had a rehab user since 2012. I would say that's not uncommon for small communities, but of course, there is money available. It is not without strings attached, of course, right? There are, a significant number of things to do to access the funding, but we have not had the success in using this program as we would want. I do know that there is one individual on the waiting list right now from Escalon to use the rehab account, and we are working with the county to see if we can get them up the list, since we have not had a user in a very long time. But we get to keep the 3 years, and if we don't use the funding, then 1 year goes away, and we keep about that same balance every year, 22,584, if we don't use it, and we're working on ways to try to use it a little bit more. So that is that program. Again, both 4 and 5 together. I would recommend we take separate votes on each of the items, but we can open up the public hearing for both.
Any questions here before we open that up? On the council on item 5?
Yes, I just had one question. So these aren't grants, right? These are either low interest or deferred loans. Is that correct? So these are all required to be paid back by the person.
Correct.
These funds.
Yep. For both programs in the home. Yes, that's right.
Similar question, different demographic. How are we advertising these programs to our residents?
Primarily through the county's program, but I can't say that we're probably doing everything that you would want to do, to be honest.
With that, let's go ahead and open up the public hearing for items 4 and 5 on the agenda for the CBDG funds and the home program. discussion, please come to the podium.
I would strongly encourage you to, yes, reach out to the local nonprofits here in town, but I would also suggest maybe including a fourth one and asking Karen. The reason, she spends a lot of money out of pocket for the senior lunch. I would also question the three that you're currently giving to because they're not in Escalon. I understand Meals on Wheels services Escalon, but I would like to see those numbers. Because honestly, there's not a reason why Karen's lunch program, I know, I'm going to call it Karen's because we're a small town, okay? It's Karen's lunch program. She subsidized quite a bit of it. There's not a reason why we can't deliver, and some food, sometimes there are lunches that are being delivered from that program. And I know Meals on Wheels has changed drastically from the last couple of years, you know, going from 7 days a week to not 7 days, you know, and 3 meals a day to not 3 meals a day. So there's a lot of changes going on there that maybe some of our citizens and our nonprofits can step up and maybe fill that gap. So I would strongly encourage you to look at the numbers to get justifications for those three groups that are not Escalon-based and what they actually do for our community, and then what the 4 people, you know, 4 groups, if you will, that are servicing our community, what actually could they do with that? So please, thank you for opening it up, and I would encourage you to, you know, look into that and to find out what those of us in Escalon can do with some money and present it to you, because this is the first I've, you know, heard of it. So it would be nice to see it here, and then, because I mean, I know the people here in Escalon, we multiply things. You know, if you give us $1, I'm going to stretch it 3 different ways. So we do, you know, we have the means to do that. So I think we can make local money stretch even farther, and people are more willing to work and add to it and expand it beyond the grant money.
Yeah.
So I would really just encourage us, let's work as a community, and let's invest in our community. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think we would all agree with that. I will say that while they are county programs, all are for Escalon residents only. The funding that those county programs receive, they provide services in other communities, but the monies that they get from Escalon can only be used in Escalon. And so we do have in the staff report, so fair housing, for instance, in the last full fiscal year, fair housing assisted 380 Escalon residents with a total household size of 1,294 people. In the current fiscal year, so, you know, halfway through or more, fair housing has assisted 88 Escalon residents with a total household size of 289 people. So there's some stats there. It looks like human services we don't have in the staff report, but Mobile Farmers Market has served approximately 360 residents a year, and these are all Escalon residents.
Okay, Jalen, just one question though. These organizations, because they come from the county, they're not just going to automatically say, well, we didn't get any CDBG funds from you, City of Escalon, so therefore we're not going to contribute to the Meals on Wheels, or we're not going to provide the Mobile Farmers Market because you didn't share any of your CDBG funds. They're not holding our residents hostage based off of this amount, correct? They will continue the programs even if we don't share the CDBG funds?
I would say they would continue the programs, but not for Escalon. So if we didn't fund fair housing or Meals on Wheels, Escalon residents wouldn't be served.
So they are holding us hostage.
I wouldn't say holding us hostage. It's you pay for a service, right? You provide funding for a service.
Okay, what is the total amount we have in that? 11,000 they're allowing us?
11,250, correct.
Back to the other thing where you're not allowing these other outside organizations that supply Escalon, the money we give them is money they return back to our community theoretically, correct? What would make more sense is we give it more to our locals, which are more efficient because they don't have to come from Stockton, number one. So they'd be here serving more efficiently, which I think makes sense to use your money that way.
Yeah.
So I agree with what she had to say. I would echo exactly what she had to say, actually. Now, let's talk about the housing. How much money in the kitty for the housing we got? About 63,000?
For the housing, the actual home program, we have 22,584.
Okay, and what's the other amount?
Maybe the 63,000 that you're referring to is the other section, the infrastructure section of the CDGB funds.
Right, okay. Now, one thing we have in this town is we have people with no sidewalks. Why couldn't we use some of this money to give those guys sidewalks? Or driveways? I can name you 20 places with no driveways in their place. And these people have kind of a shanty type environment.
Yeah. Yeah, we're absolutely looking at ways to provide sidewalks with other funding sources. So the requirement of this funding source for the 63,000 is that it is in a disadvantaged community. So you're talking, ethnic diversity, you're talking low income, moderate income.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I got them here in town.
Yeah.
So there's those people that are in that category that could use the assistance to have sidewalks in their houses and driveways that they can't afford because they're dirt. They don't have any money. I mean, and they are of a ethnic group that would qualify.
Yeah, so the way that this works is the federal government has census blocks. It's a designation of a certain area. That census block would need to be a disadvantaged community. We don't have any disadvantaged census blocks right now. So what I would...
individuals, but not blocks.
What I was saying earlier is we can go through a process, and we will next year, to actually income survey residents. And if we can get a big enough swath in an area that do have low income, then we can apply the monies through that process. But that's, it's a cumbersome process, but it's something that we plan to take on next.
Would the trailer park qualify for that?
There's certain size requirements. I mean, we would have to work with our contact at the county to determine if that's an eligible area.
How about city infrastructure?
Yeah, in areas or neighborhoods that are disadvantaged, absolutely.
Well, about a neighborhood that has no infrastructure?
If it is economically disadvantaged, it would be
How
eligible.
would we determine that?
The census block, or we do the income surveys. So the federal government has a website, and it'll tell you what status every census block has, if it's disadvantaged or not disadvantaged.
What's that?
It's the ACS.
Well, that's the that is the census. It is. I'm going to forget the name of the tool.
Community survey.
No. I'll think of it in a minute.
It's all right, it's not a big deal. I know where to look most of this up anyway. It just seems to me like all these things come our way, but we never can use them. It's always, here's the money, hang on for 3 years and give it back. That's what we've been doing over the last 20, 30 years. Why did we even take them?
Yeah, I mean, conceptually, right, absolutely agree. And this is the question I had for staff is there anything that we can do to not give back that $63,000? The other question that we're asking right now is how do we get it to the local groups? Like I mentioned, I won't name any names, but at least one of the groups knew of the funding, was communicating with us with the funding, wanted to use it on something, they couldn't use it on that, and then ended up missing the deadline on the other thing.
When you receive these funds, are some of the funds allocated to administrative costs?
In this one, no, I don't believe so, in this particular funding source.
We're doing a lot of shuffling of paper for no cost. I mean, we're not making any money on it. We're just shuffling paper.
We're providing, hopefully, benefit and infrastructure improvement to the community.
Interesting. All right, thank you.
Galen, one other question
Just one?
for right now. Would the federal government allow us to use, instead of the 15% be applied towards service groups? Would we, since we cannot use the 63,000, can we use the entire 75,000 towards CDBG funds and spread the entire 75,000 across the local groups and these 4 others?
No, no. You know, you got to imagine this is a program across 50 states, you know, thousands of counties, tens of thousands of cities. It's, you know, dialed in that way. I like the line of questioning from the entire council. We'll absolutely look into improved advertising and direct outreach to our local groups. We'll absolutely look at ways that we can use the $63,000 towards infrastructure. These are some of the things that we've started to look into and will continue to look to based on the line of questioning from the council.
Alan, correct me if I'm wrong on the CDBG program. In past years, we were able to use the money differently because HUD wasn't aware it was being used that way. The county ended up being audited sometime around 2016, 17, and basically corrected the way the money could be used. Prior to that, we were using it on street corners to put in the what are they called? The ADA compliant. We used to utilize that because you could have a presumed benefit from that. And that was updated back in, I want to say 2017, 18. But in my past experience, specific with the CDBG funds, a lot of groups don't apply for it because the paperwork that you have to complete and document is very stringent. You have to document every person that you're providing the service for and turn in forms and have them fill out certification forms and things like that. And so it's indicated in the staff report on page 27 of 60 that usually the city receives the request from the Second Harvest Food Bank. And in the past, I believe this is one of the agencies that told us that it's too difficult to do that for such a small town, and so they spread it across the county, still provide the service, but are more trying to be more efficient and effective on their paperwork, and so they provide the service but don't actually ask for the money for Escalon because of the paperwork. It's pretty, I'm not going to say difficult, but it has strings attached. Has that changed at all, Jalen?
No.
And so that could be, and we've been told that in the past, discouraging for applicants to apply because you have to document everything that you're doing. And so it makes it more difficult if you're trying to operate a program. The other item related to the home program is, like Councilmember Engel mentioned, it's a loan or you have to pay it back. More people are interested in it or would do it if it was grant funded, but it's not grant funded. And so as soon as we advise that it's a loan, the interest is lost and you have to provide substantial documents to show that you're disadvantaged, your tax returns, your income statements. There are a lot of people that don't like providing those types of things. And so that's another reason why some of these programs don't get utilized as soon as you have to produce those things. There's some people that aren't willing to share those type of items. So I just wanted to put that out there because that is something that staff and I have heard from, you know, a reasoning behind why they don't end up moving forward or why they don't submit applications for things.
Any other comments from those in the audience out here on items 4 and 5? Not seeing any. We're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. It's 7:45. We're going to close the public hearing on items 4 and 5. Bring it back to council.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we table items 4 and 5 for 30 days to allow city staff to reach out to the individuals that we mentioned in number 4, as well as do a advertisement for number 5 within the next 30 days to see really if we have the interest that's there.
I have a quick question just for that item on number 5. Holding off for 30 days, what does that really do one way or the other with us to approve the plan? This is money that's available for the community. What's going to change?
Oh, so we don't have to identify?
No, we don't have to identify anybody's going to
Okay.
use it right now. It's just a program and we're approving that program. We're not necessarily finding people for that 20,000 on the one, on the rehab and the.
Okay, so I'm
home buyer.
gonna retract my statement and say I would like to table item number 4 for 30 days to allow staff to reach out to the groups within the city to see if they may be interested. All 4.
Let's just focus on 4 right now then. So that's the motion on the table. Do we have a second for that
I
motion?
have a question really quick.
Sure.
Will the 30 days, will that put us still within the county's date that we need to apply? Will we still make that date?
I do not have that date available, so I don't know how to, I can't answer that right now.
And I amend my motion to say pending this, that make sure, to ensure that it doesn't screw up that deadline.
I think that's, I think that's a good motion from our standpoint, right? So up to 30 days, we can communicate that we have a pending deadline within that 30 days or not. And, but I don't know how to do the approval if we,
What I would do is I would approve. I would just do a motion to give staff 30 days to do the things you suggested, unless there's a deadline within the next 30 days and it can't be brought to council, then you are basically providing contingent approval for them to approve it as is. So try to get more, outreach. If you can't get it, or you can't do that within 30 days, and there's a deadline and you can't wait to bring it back to council, you have the authority to approve it.
Can I ask a quick question? Because obviously I'm part of one of these, and this involves potential money. Does that, probably shouldn't vote on this, right?
For the one that that nonprofit would potentially be eligible for.
For number 4.
Right, is that, Jalen, are those just loans as well?
no.
Those are grant funded, okay.
We're opening up for this motion. It shouldn't be a conflict. If we have to vote on who gets the money at that point, that becomes a conflict.
Yeah,
But just to approve the idea of pausing for 30 days within the deadline window, that doesn't necessarily create a financial.
Well, and I'm not sure it is anyways, even if he
Right,
was
that's what I'm
voting on
saying.
it.
Like, vote tonight shouldn't
because
affect it.
Because it's a nonprofit, that serves the interests that are similar and commensurate with, sort of concomitant with the city's purposes and interest. Under 1090, it's likely a non-interest for purposes, I think 1091.5 government code, I think is the section I'm thinking of. So it's likely a non-interest, but I just don't love giving conflict advice on the spot. So what I would say is, although it's probably a non-interest and you can vote, the safer thing would be to just not vote tonight and we can revisit it later.
yeah, I'll just abstain.
Okay, so we've gone back and forth on this motion. I feel like we need to restate what we're looking to do again before we go to asking for a second and a vote, just to be clear on what we're asking to do here.
Let me try to state it, and then if you're good with it, you can just say approved, and then we can try to get a second. The motion is to move forward with number 4.
I'm sorry. I know we're past the
No.
public, just so you
Yeah,
know.
no
the
public
grant
We're
you're
past public
speaking of,
comment. I'm sorry, you can't comment at this point.
I was giving you the date. The application due date was February 15th.
Our internal application due date for the NOFA was February 15th. I don't know about the county back-end process.
Okay, so I would just make the motion to proceed at number 4 with the direction to reach out to those 3 or 4 other entities, if time allows, and then to bring it back. If time doesn't allow, staff has authorization to move forward as presented tonight.
Yes.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any comments before we go to a vote? All right, with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries 4-0. And then next up would be item 5, looking for a motion on item 5 as well.
Yep. Let me get there so I can get the wording correct here. Item 5. I would motion to approve the proposed home fund expenditures for the fiscal year 2024-25.
I'd second that.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, back to the agenda then. Next up, administrative matters. Number 6, introduce and waive the first reading of ordinance XXX, amending chapter 5.52 and title 5 of the Escalon Municipal Code, fees for use of city facilities. Continuation from the February 20th meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item was from the last meeting, which was the introduction and waiving of this ordinance. So staff did bring this item to the February 20th meeting, and the city council agreed to have staff list or specify the eligible city facilities and bring the additional amendments back to council for further review. So if approved, if the introduction and waiving of the first reading is approved, it will come back to council for a waiving of its second reading and adoption of the ordinance. And then at that time, it takes 30 days to become effective. So attached to this item is the revised / proposed amendments to the ordinance. And then we did attach the ordinance itself with Exhibit A, which would show it as a clean version, in case that's easier to read, because I know when you get into revisions, at least they're not red, we did blue, so they're not as scary looking. But yeah, we do have those proposed edits in here. So if you look on page 36 of 60 for the section labeled 5.52015, which is the list of city facilities, we added that section in to specify the listing. And it has City Hall, Escalon Community Center, Council Chambers, Hogan Ennis Park Sports Fields, Main Street Park, and recreational facilities. And then additional language was reorganized to kind of match up with that. And then because council's original direction to staff was to make it to where if nonprofits applied for that partial fee waiver and met that certain criteria as defined in the code, they wouldn't have to come to council for approval. If that's the case, in the event that maybe they are not approved or have issues with approval or denial at staff level, an appeals process has been added to the agenda, which they would appeal to the city council. So at that time, they would appeal and they would come to city council for a final ruling on that or action. So if you have any questions on this item, please let me know.
A question, as I was not here on that, I see city council or council chambers listed. What part of City Hall is not the chambers here that is available for use? And why is it listed on the list? I'm just looking for clarification.
So council chambers was originally listed in the municipal code, up at the top at 5.52010. It had stated originally the city council finds that the use of certain public facilities, including but not limited to city parks and recreational facilities, the community center, and city hall council chambers hereinafter. So that was actually listed in our municipal code.
Right,
prior.
I'm just trying to figure, we separated out City Hall and council chambers. So I come in here and I want to rent the City Hall. What does that entail? What are you defining as a City Hall? Because I don't see that outside of this chambers, what we could call City Hall that's rentable.
I mean, to me, city hall and council chambers would be the same thing.
Well, that's why I'm just asking for
Yeah.
the clarification here, because this doesn't, to me, I wasn't here for that, so.
I mean, what I would say is this, it creates the opportunity and flexibility for future event space that the city may have. There may be something, somebody wants to have a reception or something in the lobby, I don't know. But this doesn't require the council to have a schedule for any of these places, it just creates that flexibility now. Okay. And as it says right there at the bottom, this list of facilities offered may be periodically updated, so the council could change it at any time in the future. They could expand the list, they could contract the list. So I would just say it provides some flexibility. Like I'm thinking the lobby area and maybe some of, some other areas that
Okay, I was just looking for
future.
some clarification, because it didn't.
Yeah.
We're not giving up office and cubes.
Yeah.
So just kind of triggered, I was like, City Hall is the office space, and this is the chambers, is what I see, so, okay, thank you.
No, I'm with you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you there, Frank. City Hall implies to me that I can just come here and rent all of City Hall. I mean, I think it'd be easier to strike City Hall and just leave it as council chambers. And if we did want to periodically update it at a public meeting in the future, then we could add something if there was an additional. Is there a reason why leaving it now is more advantageous at this juncture? Just because we wouldn't have to do a first reading again, it would have to be revised and we'd have to bring it back? What would your reasoning be?
There's really no reason you can't do it other than what you just described, which is you have to restart the process again, which isn't a big deal.
It's not a big deal. This item, until it becomes effective, anybody who applies for this will just continue to be processed as originally allowed in the code. So.
And I'd like to take out City Hall off the list myself and have it just to the council chambers at best.
While we're at it, can I ask what F recreational facilities entails? Since we do have Hogan Ennis Park and sports fields.
I see that becoming an issue where somebody wants to rent out the playground but not the field, and then, well, I rented out the playground. I think we should include city parks /
Well, I don't think city parks are rentable. They're not rentable space.
what
So I
are,
think this is where Frank comes in and says it provides that flexibility in the future, but if you're not looking for that, like recreational facilities to me would be the recreational facilities that are available on the fee schedule. And so this is kind of more general, which was mentioned, like provides more flexibility. But currently, the city only has, Hogan Ennis Park and the sports field and Main Street Park on listing for schedule to be areas to be rented specifically. And so you could leave it for that flexibility, or you could propose removing it like with City Hall.
Yeah, it's council's call.
Thoughts? Is there more support for removing City Hall? We've got a couple of us that are in favor of that idea. Do we have any others that are?
Yeah, I would back that.
So it sounds like we've got a consensus currently with that. There, the City Hall comes off the list.
I like the removal of City Hall, and now that you say that the recreational facilities does give us more flexibility, I think keeping that on would be appropriate.
I'm in favor of removing City Hall because we don't want people to think that they can come in and rent just random spaces with
Random
City Hall.
small conference room or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Rent a room for, yeah. So with those changes, what does that change for what we're doing tonight with this item on the agenda?
Well, you want to go to public comment.
Right.
And then give direction to staff if there's no motion to adopt, to introduce it, and
Okay.
we'll make the changes and bring it back.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll open up to public comment on item 6 here, for anybody who would like to speak on this topic. The next page there, if we could. A through F is the list we were just discussing. Any comments? If not, then we'll go ahead and close public comments on that, and then I guess you pretty much have your staff direction at this point to bring it back to our next meeting then, correct? To remove,
Go ahead and remove City Hall.
remove City Hall from that.
And bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Next up, administrative matters also. Item 7, discuss and possibly take action or give direction on the Main Street Park Improvement Project survey results.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item at the February 5th meeting, it was expressed by Councilmember Engel to have this information proposed to the public and brought before council. So we went ahead and put together the survey results and notes that were from the workshops that we conducted on both the January 9th and 16th. And all of that information has been added, and this is just a discussion / possibly take action item. It's just putting the information out there. And if staff has any additional direction that they want, or excuse me, council has any additional direction they want staff to take, to let us know. But first step, putting it out there for review and discussion amongst the council and public. So if you're looking, the first page itself are the survey results from the January 9th workshop. And then we also had our council, or excuse me, our workshop notes from that meeting, which included feedback and suggestions. And then we also have the results from that survey on the January 16th workshop with also those notes. So if you have any questions or feedback, please let us know.
Do we have any information back from the railroad?
We are currently working with the railroad, who indicated that they would like us to update the lease now that we've submitted an application to them for the park improvements. So we're working on the lease agreement and then permitting for any future work that we may do associated with the leasable land in the park. So no information from them yet, but we are going kind of back and forth on this review.
And you were working on different ideas to then bring back to the public?
And we are also working at the same time on park concepts as directed by the council, bring back concepts that we envision at this point to take back out to the community in workshops. And then once we get consensus from the community, bring it back to the council for future
And those
direction.
are based on the workshops with the public?
Correct, based on the feedback from the workshops.
And so when that feedback comes back, assuming there's an arrangement with the railroad to lease that property properly, or have some arrangement, because we don't want to fix some other person's property without, having some agreement in place, I think, then that will go back out to the public, at which point we would know if they want that or not.
Correct.
There's some information on page 47. Can we have that up on the screen and rotated, please? It's from the first meeting, correct, January 9th?
You're there, you're okay.
I guess why I want to make sure this is, like was mentioned earlier, completely transparent, is because this is a big part of our social hub in town. And, you have everything from park feet to car shows and
Thank you.
Keeping that historic stuff in line, as well as balancing anything that might be new. I think it definitely has to go through the public.
Could definitely use some modifications and keeping with our traditions as well at the same time. I think we can manage both sides of that and make it work for everybody. Me personally, I think we should continue on with what you've been working on so far and continue to work with the railroad until we get an answer. And at that point, we know we can move forward. As long as it doesn't hurt our SJCOG timeline, I don't think there's any real decisions to be made tonight other than just continue focusing on the railroad conversations and lock that down. And by the time we get to that, we can have some conceptual stuff to have some more workshops at that point. I think that's my opinion of where we're at tonight.
I feel comfortable with
This
that
was
as
just a
well.
review of the
Yeah.
of the outcome. So I'm kind of interested to see this. On page 47, the left-hand side, second row down, I guess it would be, it says amenities desired, talks about a basketball court, volleyball court. Were those expressed via the public?
Correct.
All of those items?
So in the actual survey, so would you like, question number 7, would you like to see recreational amenities in Main Street There was a line under that, and it sort of listed which one. So we put exactly verbatim what the members of the public who filled out a survey said. And so you can see play structure was mentioned 6 times, pickleball court mentioned 4 times, bocce ball mentioned twice, and the others each mentioned 1 time.
Okay. It's useful information. I appreciate you gathering it. Can we also look at the results from the 16th? Or the 20, it was the 16th, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's page 53.
Two more pages down, I think.
A little less participation?
Fewer overall survey results, correct?
So Jalen, last time you talked to council about this, you noted that you were talking with a landscape architect.
Mm-hmm.
So is the goal to take these 2 survey results and amend the current plan based off of this survey, and then that would be the basis for the next workshop? Is that kind of the direction that you're going?
Yeah, exactly. Take the feedback that we've received, develop 3, 4 alternative scenarios, options, and then present those to the public.
And do we know a timeline for that?
We don't have a specified timeline. We have been in discussions with a landscape architect, and the landscape architect is just to help us view the overall park, right? We talk a lot about tradition and the sort of central hub. We do have the parameters of the grant, but it is also just a community park. It's a centralized park. And so we want to be thinking through a few of these different lenses, taking into absolutely what we've heard, again, about tradition, about the events that are held down there from the viewpoint of the businesses, all that. So we're trying to take it all into consideration and then present 3 or 4 options to the public and then eventually to the city council.
Amongst those 3 or 4 options, I'd like us to also include an option to just forego all improvements at Main Street Park and looking at an option to utilize funds for sidewalks throughout Escalon where they are not present.
You cannot use that money for sidewalks throughout town.
Sidewalks with a bike path?
Nope. This was a process, there was a competitive bid process exclusively for what you bid. You can't just change the money from downtown and move it to the rest of the town. It's not part of the process from SJCOG. We are either locked into this park in some format, whatever it is, or the money goes back to SJCOG to either go to Stockton or Manteca, which is, I can't remember which city is next on the list. But we can't convert it to do all the sidewalks in town. Manteca, I can tell you, Manteca's grant to ask for that same thing was turned down by SJCOG because it was not specific to a park or an area. SJCOG did not view that favorably for Manteca.
Is there a way to petition that?
You can always try. I don't think you're gonna have success with that though, based on what I was in meetings with them. They were very specific on that.
Well, if we don't ask, the answer is always no.
That's true.
Yeah, real quick, just on that topic, as the mayor mentioned, it was part of a competitive process. We do know that there's a couple different components to the park. There's the pathway through the park, and then there's the sidewalk component. We probably do, within the competitive process, right, have the option, if that's what the council wanted, to forego the path through the park and keep the sidewalk improvements. You know, but those things that we would have to discuss with the reviewing body, the grantee, right, to ensure that we do in fact have those options.
I think it's reasonable to ask. Worst they can tell us is no. Either way, the funds, if they can be utilized by our residents on property that belongs to Escalon, that just seems to make more sense to me. I'd love to see some improvements to the park. It sounds like a lot of other people would too. But ultimately, we don't own it. We don't plan on buying it. We don't have consensus from the community on what should go in there. But I think everybody would agree that there are plenty of neighborhoods in town that could use sidewalks.
Quick question, how long are the leases with the railroad for this land? Like how many years do they typically?
I haven't seen a typical, our lease in particular started in 1993, and it's been month to month since that time.
Okay.
It is month to month. BNSF has told us in this process that they like to renew those every 10 years or so, or when something comes up like this. So we will be in probably discussions with the railroad on our lease.
Yeah, I'd like to look at what Jeremy is talking about as far as the sidewalks, but also, make a motion essentially that we're not really moving forward until we get answers from the railroad.
Before we go to motion, we do need to open it up to the public on this item.
Sorry about that.
I'm with you on the idea. But let's go ahead and open it to those and the folks in the room here if they'd like to come to the podium and speak on this topic.
Sorry about that.
No, you're right.
Has anybody thought about looking for a grant that gives us a chance to buy the land instead of fixing it? I think we should be looking for grants that gets us the money to buy the park. The other thing we should do is get a appraisal for the land's value now, and then look what it's gonna be after we're done. So when we go to negotiate, or before we negotiate for that lease, maybe we should talk about that. Because you're gonna go out there and dump about, what, $1.5 million in a piece of property you don't own, then you're gonna go try to release it from somebody. And I just wish I had some land to lease. But the thing is, it makes sense that we go and we tell them, hey, look, here's the estimated value of this property today. We're gonna dump this much in. If we were to buy it, we'd like to be able to buy it before we improve it, those prices. Because I think what we should do is finally buy the land. Because we're gonna keep pumping money into this thing, and someday you couldn't buy it if you wanted to. Because the expense is just gonna be outrageous. And what was the previous lease, by the way? How much was it?
It started at $25 a month and has a year, excuse me, $25 a year, and grown.
37.
Yeah, grown by pennies over the last 30 years.
Yeah, well, that's fine. They're holding all the cards. They can afford for us to keep pumping money into it. The other thing is, we talked about the different types of improvements and stuff. My understanding, there was a survey put out in the community, like after we've had all these meetings. Is that accurate? Did we do a survey after all the meetings we had?
Not after. The survey was available at each of the 2 public workshops.
But it wasn't put out independently?
No.
Okay. Well, the other thing is, I'd like to add my 2 cents on the bathroom situation. We're gonna pump a ton of money into a bathroom. I think we're better off putting portables, 2 nice real portables. One at one end of the park, and one at the other. And for the kind of money you're gonna spend to build that bathroom, you can have those cleaned a long time. Not to mention, if you ever didn't buy the property, if they kept jacking the price up, at least you wouldn't have your money tied up into a bathroom. And I think the consensus with everyone I spoke to was, we'd like to see our park left alone. We use it as a social park. We use it to put cars on, we use it for park feet, we use it for Christmas on Main. And we don't need more parking lots. I think we have plenty. There's parking lots on the other side of the bank. If people can't walk a block away, I don't know what that means. You got a gym across the street and they're telling you they can't walk to it? I think most of the people I've talked to, and I think most people who come to these deals, all said that pretty much the same thing. We like our park the way it is. We don't want it chopped up with a bunch of pickleball courts and all the other different activities they want to put in there. Put them at the far end of the park, in the dirt park. Don't cluster our park up the way it is. We like it the way it is, and the Lions Club gives a lot of money to this high school from that car show, almost $500,000. So we'd like to keep the tradition going.
Question to city staff. What's our right-of-way from the road in towards that park? How many feet is our right-of-way as a city?
From the street,
We're allowed to put sidewalks without the railroad's approval because our right-of-way, correct?
Yeah, there is an easement there.
That's what I'm asking, is how much of an easement do we have to do as we please?
Usually, what, 10 to 15?
It's approximately where the water fountain is.
Yeah.
About 10, 15 feet
Yeah,
generally.
usually
It's
it's
behind
between
curb
10
line.
and 15 feet.
Okay. I know a lot of people that want a sidewalk along that road.
Yeah.
I've heard that more than anything. At a minimum, the sidewalk is required, is what I've been hearing from the community members that talk to me, is they can argue about all the pickleball stuff they want, but if we don't get a sidewalk, we're gonna be very upset. that goes along the park where everybody's at, when we're all standing up there for the parades and stuff, they want that sidewalk. That's what I've heard. So I just want to know what our easement and rights are, that we can do it, whether or not
We have
railroad.
the easement for it.
Okay, we do have an easement, okay.
Yeah, I did check with our attorney, or
Okay.
our engineer on that.
Okay, so we do have that, okay. And that might be something we ask as well when we're talking to SJ Cog, is if we cut it back to just a sidewalk as an option, is that something we could do to the sidewalk that goes all the way to St. John that was originally planned on that aspect? Is something we can ask them as well for options and ideas, not that it's set in stone or anything, just an idea. This point, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council then. Do we have enough direction then for city staff?
I don't think we need to make a motion.
I don't think so either. It's just direction here at this point.
Yeah, we want to see if we can just do sidewalks, get some options from a landscape architect, ask about the easement that the mayor just mentioned, and
See what SJCOG, what their flexibility is in
Yeah.
all aspects of what we're doing. Some, none, all or nothing. What are we looking at?
I do think this is a process that'll play out over the next several months, so we will continue to update the council on where we are, conversations with BNSF, with SJ Cog, on the design. We'll continue to provide updates, but, this is something that'll take several months. Just working with BNSF itself will take some time.
Okay. We just closed it and called it a day for that.
No one was asked if there was, we were not asked if there were other
I
people.
believe I said that. Is there any other comment? And I don't see any other comments.
Well, it went over my head, so I would like to.
At this point, we're closed. We can move on. We're not making any motion. We're not making any action. There's no action item on this.
All I have is, I have a question for council. Am I allowed to go up?
Go ahead and ask your question if it's quick, please.
So there's been a lot of talk with these meetings and public meetings about the fact that the park belongs to the railroad. Very difficult to ever envision a time that we could actually purchase it. So I have a question for council. How usual or unusual is it that there would be grants that would be available for a project like this or a city to be involved in, but the project would not be built on property that belongs to the city, and the project would be built on the railroad property regardless of how long of a lease we would be able to get, because obviously there would be no lease that would go on guaranteed indefinitely.
Not an answer we can give you right now, I don't believe. I don't think anybody's got that answer.
I asked council, did you hear me, my question?
You're asking me?
Yeah, I wanted to address.
Because that's also called the council, so I didn't know.
I asked council specifically, which I guess I should rephrase it. I wanted to ask the city attorney, how, is this something that happens how common is it? Or it just seems odd to me that there would be funds available for a city to embark on a project like this and make improvements on property that the city doesn't own. So is this, or have you ever dealt with this?
I would just,
this must have come up somewhere in the past?
so typically with the way grants are worked, the grantor, the agency, or whether it's a federal government, state, local, whatever, whoever the funder is, they provide the conditions for the grant. And grant conditions are essentially, a grant is basically a contract between the donative agency and the donee right? The agency is providing the funds and the agency is receiving the funds. And the grant conditions are going to be different for we just talked about the CDBG grant. Those are going to have their own limitations and restrictions and conditions. ARPA funds from a couple years ago that set our inflation off like crazy, that had its own set of conditions and limitations. So really, it's think of it as a contract. It's between two parties to decide what they want. It's probably unusual that in general, the donating agency is willing to invest. It's really not an issue of Escalon as a recipient, but the donative agency is willing to invest in infrastructure that underlying agency on property they don't own, but that's really up to the funding agency to decide, and they're the ones that set the parameters. So, I mean, I can't give you a percentage, I can't give you, I don't see it a ton, but that's most of the time because the donating agency, if they are going to back something, they want to make sure, the entity that receives it has ultimate control and say on that property. That's the best I could answer that.
Okay, well, thanks for that clarification. So then my last question would be, how aware is the donating agency of the ownership of the land?
They're aware.
They're aware.
Very aware?
They're very aware.
Okay, thank you.
Jalen, in your conversations with the railroad, have you asked them, can we buy this property?
We have not gotten to that stage yet. In my research, the city has gone through conversations in the last 35 years, 2 different times to purchase the land, and it hasn't happened for one reason or another. We've received 2 appraisals. We've gone through the process. We just haven't gotten there, either on their end or on our end. So in this round, in 2023, 2024, we have not had the conversation about purchasing the land. We really haven't got that direction from the council yet, but is absolutely part of the conversations we will eventually have with BNSF.
I think it's important to ask them that question, yes.
Right. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 8. Discuss and provide direction on the agenda item request from Councilman Stroman and Mayor Pro Tem Hagan regarding keycard access to City Hall for members of council.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item was brought up at the February 5th meeting about restoring keycard access to City Hall for council members outside of regular business hours and primarily for the purpose of checking mailboxes and/or attending meetings. And so this item was placed on the agenda for discussion. And so if you have any questions with staff, just let me know.
Can I share some thoughts?
Please.
So I understand, from what I understand, there was a precedent, as what's noted on the agenda. Previous councils had access to City Hall to attend meetings. And that access was suggested to be removed by the former finance director. And so, as many of us know, we all work full-time jobs, and sometimes coming to City Hall between regular business hours, 8 to 5, is difficult to be here. And so the purpose of me asking for this restoration was simply if on the weekends or when it's convenient for us, we can come in, key card in, let the city manager know, hey, I'm just going in to check my mailbox. We key card in, we check our mailbox, and we leave. And it's not an opportunity to come in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and start bugging the staff at the front and start asking those questions. So if we could set parameters that if you're here to conduct city business, then obviously go through the proper channels of contacting and having discussion with the city manager first. And that was really the reason why I was asking for this restoration, not to create havoc within staff. But then I started thinking about this more, and it's apparent to me that there is a disconnect right now between council members and staff. And I feel that this key card access kind of increases that division. And at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of council members working with administrative staff, i.e. Public Works, chief, city manager, and other city staff members, that we all work together for the residents of the city of Escalon. So that was the reason that I asked for consideration of the restoration, and meant no other maliciousness behind it.
So I have a question. Is that how that worked? Was the previous finance director requested that city council not have key cards? So how did that come about?
So, yeah, so that, at that time, you know, we had new council, new staffing, and all of our most of our department heads, new chief, new finance director, new city manager, new council majority. And so it came up originally citywide, checking access cards for the city, verifying who has access to what and kind of cleaning that up, because we have had a lot of turnover. And then it came up to council level as well. Larger agencies, in particular, practice not giving that type of access. And so it was recommended at that time to you know, increase safety, increase security to the building, and then decrease any liability. Our staff that's currently here, you know, they have access cards, but nobody comes here on the weekends. And so if they were to come in on the weekends, they would usually reach out to their department head, or let us know, or schedule it in advance. And so it hasn't been something that's practiced. And so at that time it was, you know, well, let's strengthen this, and if council doesn't object to that, we'll go ahead and remove that if it's not needed. And so at that time, when the new council came on board, I spoke with each of you and advised, we're gonna go ahead and remove this. Is there any issue? And at that time, I had questions come up, but nobody that was a strong no, we need to have access. And so since then, we're going on close to a year and a half, maybe or so, that we haven't had access. And I mean, if council is open to it, they can be set at certain hours, they can be set on certain days. It's just providing that direction. I don't have an issue with it. The access card would let you into City Hall, and any areas that have items that are required by law to be secure, you will not have access to. You know, city clerk files, records, and, you know, police department, period, it would only be the back door, which gives you access to the common area, so.
I would, and just on that, I would prefer to be able to come in the back door during meetings. I really do. And then,
Yeah, it would be for back door.
That would be preferred for me. And then the other thing, I have had meetings that are set here, and then I'm just kind of sitting outside for 10 minutes or 15 minutes waiting for somebody to come to the door, or not being able to get a hold of somebody on a Friday when phones aren't turned on and all of that. So I would like to be able to come in for the meetings that are scheduled, for checking mail on, you know, the Fridays typically when the doors are closed. And then, yes, I would prefer to come in the back door during meetings, so that I don't have to come through this way. And
And it could
that
be
would
set
be
that way.
that is what I would prefer.
Excuse me. I would agree with what Melinda's saying on this. I mean, I do think that it's a precedent thing, so it's more of a symbolic thing as far as, you know, we the people run the city, right? But at the same time, we've been voted into these positions by the public, so they obviously have our trust, regardless of, you know, what person you're talking about up here. We're all voted in here, so you have that aspect of it. I definitely agree it's not something that should be, we should be walking around in here, without some sort of, oversight. I think it goes both ways. So I do think that that aspect of it needs to be, hammered out. That's just my opinion.
I would like to say, I don't see any reason for having access on the weekends ever to get your mail. There's nothing in our mailboxes that pressing with time that's required when we're here twice a month for meetings to get our mail then. That doesn't work for me. The other thing with access to department heads, we as a body here work with the city manager, not with all the department heads or other staff. We're supposed to be working through the city manager. So if we're gonna be coming in at any point in time to talk with those people, we should have appointments with them. We should not do doing things without the city manager knowing if we're gonna meet outside of that chain of command. Because it is, anybody who comes in the back door is a disruption to everybody in the building, in my opinion. And we are running short-staffed and lean and mean, as they say. Any distraction messes up with efficiency and performance. And I struggle for adding that to be just getting the mail outside of business hours or just being able to come in the building. And I really don't have a problem coming in with the public through the front door for meetings. So I'm honestly completely opposed to giving us keys. If that's the way the vote goes, so be it, but do not provide one to me because I will not take one. I don't believe it's necessary.
I'll jump in there, the same thing. I don't see a need for key card access. I don't see a need for any of us to have access to this building after regular business hours. The request is primarily for the purpose of checking mailboxes and attending meetings. We're a small town. We meet with our folks at the grocery store. We meet with our neighbors. We meet at the park. I don't see a need to make myself feel special to come in here and have my meeting here. I would agree with the mayor and request that if this does pass, which seems like it's going that way, that I would not be given a key card and not be granted access to this building after hours.
Just to clarify, when it says attending meetings, it's not to have meetings within City Hall with the constituents. It's basically to have meetings with city manager or with development services manager. So attending meetings, it's with city pre-scheduled, determined appointment meetings that appointments are already set in place.
I can just speak for myself, but I'm not too special to not walk in that front door.
So if that's the case, how can you attend a meeting on Friday when the front door is locked?
So if I have a scheduled meeting, somebody's expecting me. Right?
They'll open the door, you call them to ask them to open the door. It's not that big of a stretch for me to do that.
I mean, it sounds like we got away. Let's just throw it out there. Let's vote on it and get her done, move to the next one.
But at this point, if we're done with discussion here, we got to open up to the public for their input at this point. Let's open up to the room here. If anybody at the room's got a comment or a concern or question regarding the item of key cards for the city council for the city's hall. Anybody? Not seeing anybody rushing to the podium, we'll go ahead and close it then. Bring it back here. Any other further comment?
I would make a motion that we get our key cards back, but that anything that's done within the city has to be through, normal office hours or scheduled with the city manager.
Before we go to that next, I just have a question. Can you program a card for business hours and only like certain times for city council meetings, like the first and third Mondays, and they have access during our meetings for that? Is that something we can pre-schedule and determine?
I believe so.
Is that something we can add to that motion so that's only during normal business hours and for first and third Mondays for meetings or whatever for that regard? I don't see any reason for weekend access to the building whatsoever.
Yeah, that's why
my
I said
opinion.
I have a
it'd have to be scheduled with city manager. It'd have to be some sort of emergency scenario. I mean, there's probably some reason in a random way, but not in a consistent way.
So I have a question though. Does legal counsel have a key card as well?
He does, yes.
Okay, and then should his also be limited to a certain hours that we should have in and out as well? Like, should we look at other
I'm okay with-
staff?
You can, but he's
You know.
also on a contract agreement with us for liability and insurance and all that. And so that was the idea behind issuing him one, is he's in an active contract with the city. So in case something happens with his card access, we could go to BBK to resolve. So our city engineer as well, we're in an active contract, and so the staffing that we have in active contracts also have key cards because they're in a negotiated contract with the city and provide insurance.
So we need to redress the motion then?
Yeah, I'm just curious why everybody's isn't time sensitive or time restricted. If we're gonna say that all of them shouldn't be, no one should be on the weekends, or no one should be, why aren't they all, in
At
those
this point, we're getting outside the
parameters?
agenda item, which is just for the council. That's for another discussion, in my opinion.
Right. So what's the
Getting
motion on
outside
the
with-
floor?
Well, my motion, and part of this is based on precedent as well as the symbology of it, is, the reason I think that this is an important thing, but basically it's to allow us to get our key cards back with the parameters of, during business hours or a scheduled appointment with the city manager. So, in other words, the city manager would have to be aware of any kind of entry that's going to happen, and because you'd want to have oversight on any kind of, entry, whether.
And city council meetings?
Correct.
Okay, and city council
City
meetings.
council meetings. Sorry.
I'll second that.
So a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion, or we go to vote? Not hearing any discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. Motion carries 3-2. Next up, item 9, discuss and provide direction on the agenda item request from Councilman Stroman and Mayor Pro Tem Hagan regarding designing a city flag.
So,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
so this one, before Councilmember Stroman talks, I just want to say this one, you were gone, and
Sorry?
I wanted to hear out what Councilmember Stroman had to say on this, but this one makes me a little bit nervous as to, where, what the intention of it is and where we're going with this, because I think the only thing I can see legitimately being on a flag for our city would be, our logo. And I don't know, unless there's something else there I'm not seeing.
Councilman Stroman, is your item? Please expand.
All right,
I
so.
wasn't here as well.
Sorry you weren't here, Mayor. But I know that we all took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the state of California. But there's a lot of upset people right now with the state of California. And I think that's the understatement of the year. And I thought of this idea because while I can respect the history behind the state of California flag, every time I see the state of California, I get frustrated because I feel like that flag truly doesn't represent us within the city of Escalon. So I started thinking about it and I was like, well, why don't we have a flag that represents our community? And so I went through and looked, and there are a number of cities. In fact, the majority of cities within the city or within the state of California do have a city flag, going from a small city like ours all the way, obviously, to the size of Los Angeles and everywhere in between. So the purpose, or when I started thinking about this, I was thinking, well, how can we improve our community by the development of a city flag? And quite honestly, Mayor Pro Tem, it can be something so simple as taking a blue background and applying our city seal, and that's flag design. Or it could be something else to represent our city. So the intent is that we would open this up to school kids within the city of, or within the Escalon Unified School District bounds. That being said, they do not have to attend Escalon Unified Schools. They can attend one of the charter schools, they can attend one of the local private schools, et cetera, and design a flag. What the flag is intended for within the city. And this is actually pretty timely because I believe that the Lions Club last week did a presentation on what the United States flag means to us at some of the local elementary schools. But the parameters would be that any student within the Escalon Unified School District up to 18 and under could design a flag. Then we would take those designs, we as the council would take those designs, and each council member would pick their favorite design. And then those 5 designs would be put online anonymously, and the general public could vote on it. And then once the voting is tabulated, that comes back before council, and council then would adopt the design of the flag. And then that would become the City of Escalon flag. But ultimately, it could be, it's a symbol of our community. And so I wanted to throw that out there and get an idea. I mean, right now, and I know Justin is currently working on it, but we have 2 different logos within the city, 500 yards apart. Some people know us as Stepping Stones to Central California, and some people know us as the land of peaches and cream. Which is it? So this kind of puts that debate to bed, and if this is something that would move forward, then and with council approval, then I would talk to, with the city manager and myself, we could address this at the next meeting with the school district. But I'm open up to answer any questions, either from any council members or the public.
Let's start here at the council level with comments, concerns, and questions from our group here. Our thoughts on this? I concern myself greatly with the idea of creating a flag, and then what does that do? Now we have to create a flag policy, and who else wants to fly a flag on our buildings and around town? What we have now without having a flag policy, I think, is more, it's a better, cleaner look. We got the red, white, and blue, and we've got our state flag, whether you like it or not. That is our state we live in. If you hate it that much, leave. But I don't think we have an identity crisis within our community that requires us to have school children create a flag that will become our city flag per se. I'm concerned that you want to just do it to 18 years and under. There might be some graphic design artists, you know, if you did get to the point of wanting to do it, and you're going to exclude somebody who's out of college with a graphic design degree and wants to create a flag, and they're excluded from the ability to participate. So I struggle with just the kids being involved and what it might look like. I honestly don't think we need a flag to change anything in our community myself.
I mean, that's where I'm at right now too, is I feel that although I think the idea is nice to try to get the kids involved in something that is city-centric, I think maybe in a different way would be the better answer. I think through a flag process, there's just so many things that are unforeseen that could potentially go sideways. And so I feel the same way as Dave.
I want to try and keep it from being political, and I think that's where the road it could go down and create more of a problem than solve a problem that's perceived.
So How would that be? How is that political?
Depends on what somebody comes up with an idea for the flag that might be contrary to other folks politically within this community.
But we as the council have the final say.
No, we don't. How is that possible? You asked to put it out to vote. We don't have the final say of what's going to be on a flag. If politically someone on this council decides to anonymously pick a flag that is not necessarily going to be perceived well in our community, that's going to create more division than it solves. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a potential for that, and that's concerning. Again, just one opinion at the council here.
So I don't see a problem with a flag in general. It looks like from a sampling of the other cities that are in California with flags, most of them are the seal that is printed on cloth, like on a flag. That's more of where the direction I'd probably look to go. Now, our discussion of the seal itself, and we have two different mottos going, and, you know, we don't exactly have a river flowing through Escalon, and we're kind of the stepping stones through Central California, from Yosemite to San Francisco. Like, we have that discussion of if we like our seal and whatnot and put it on a flag. But I do know that we do have four corners. You know, we do have the McHenry and Highway 120 thoroughfare there, and we do have flags flying. So that's also, I think they're mostly purple and gold. And so that doesn't exactly, that represents our high school, but, you know, this is what's supposed to be representing us as Escalon. So I don't have a problem with the flag flying and representing our city. But I don't know about the children only creating an absolutely new flag process. But I do like the idea of representing us with a flag as we're driving through Escalon.
I just don't see it as an idea I can get behind.
I can say as something for the folks coming through town, they're gonna look at the signage, not at a flag per se. It's whipping or it's down without the wind, you're not gonna see it anyways. You're gonna see the Land of Peaches and Cream or whatever else we have on a road sign / monument, if you will, coming into town. But let's hear from those folks in the audience here if they would like to come up and speak on this topic.
Hello again, Sherry. I'm not opposed, however. I'm thinking of this in a totally different type of way. Fine, you pick a flag. Who's paying for it? We already have a budget problem. And since most of the flags that you've discussed, you know, do use logos, so one logo and stick with it. But as far as a flag goes, you're just looking at more expense, and we're trying to figure out ways to, you know, raise our economy and to raise money for our city. So I think that's just going to be something else and more expense, and really, yeah, not necessary as far as identity. I do agree with you on that. You know, I think Escalon works really well together as a community. I'm not opposed to the flag. I'm just, bottom line is, it's going to cost, and we already are trying to look at places to cut costs and, you know, bring in revenue. So consider that. Thanks.
Answer your question, Sherry, I was going to purchase the flag.
Now, I applaud your creativity. It's not a bad idea under different circumstances. We used to have banners on the downtown, and the banners would hang on the poles. And when you drove downtown, you see the banners on the poles. I forget what I had one I gave to the bar downtown as some memorabilia for the bar, but they were about this big, about that tall, and they were hanging up on the poles, and they looked kind of neat. They were blue and gold, I think they were, purple and gold maybe. But as far as the flag idea goes, it's not a bad idea, but the thing is, funding is one thing, and then the other thing is, you are going to divide people because no one's going to agree on the flag. That's the problem. Everyone's going to say, I don't like that flag, I don't like this flag. So what'd we gain? But I do like the idea of trying to make a little more activity in town with a positive spin to it. But I'm with Sherry. It's, you want to fund it, do it as a civic thing, you know? Just do it on your, sell some flags, make them and sell them. Maybe people catch on, maybe you have something on, you know? But leave the city out of it.
can't pass this one up. Would we have to make a special ordinance to allow the flag? Because all the flags you see on 120, those are all illegal. Our ordinance specifically says you can't fly them, although they're up there. But as far as the flag goes, it's just a can of worms. You're asking for trouble.
Anybody else? Then we'll go ahead and close public comment on this item and bring it back to council for potential action.
Well, it sounds like there's no vote that's needed because I'm the only one that really likes the idea, so let it just die.
Okay, we can do that too.
Any direction at this time? No direction?
No direction on that item at this time. Before we go to the next item, we're going to come back to council communications, but I want everybody let everybody know that we will not have a closed session that has been canceled for this evening. And so we're just going to go directly to final council communications for the end of the meeting. Let's start off with Councilman Engel. What you got for us tonight?
A couple things. One, can we provide information to the residents on the upcoming general election? Or like the deadlines, filing dates, those types of things? Has that been posted already?
It has not. There's criteria, number of days, and the county hasn't released that stuff yet.
Has not released?
Yeah, we consolidate our election with them, and so that information will probably come to council in May.
Okay.
And then from that period, we'll open up nominations, and then those dates will be shown. It'll be like election minus so many days.
Okay. And that'll
They'll put a
be,
schedule out. That hasn't been released yet. They're just getting through this primary right now.
Okay.
And then when they pass the primary, they'll set up for the general.
okay. So I'm assuming that it would just be on all of our social media, here at City Hall, all that
Correct, and we'll
information
set
will
up
be
a page
posted?
on the website that'll say elections.
Okay.
And that pops up every election period, if we have enough people running. So this year, we'll have 2 seats that will be up. And if we have more than 2 people apply for the seats, then we'll actually conduct an election. But if only 2 people apply, then we would forego election.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
The water rate increases, I did get a question about that. Can you briefly explain the schedule percentage and where funds are directed?
Sure. So the water increase that was applied to this bill is the last of a 5-year schedule that was approved back in 2018 or 19.
Okay.
It's the last one. I believe it was, I can't off the top of my head, I want to say somewhere between 3% and 4%. I'd have to double check that, but it's in accordance with the schedule that was adopted by council at that time. And so it's the final one in that active rate study.
Okay.
Now, moving on, if any other increases were applied to the water fund, we'd have to go out for a Prop 218, hire somebody to reevaluate the water system, and then move forward from there.
Okay. And
Yeah,
those,
we're not allowed, the city's not allowed to just raise water rates without some type of nexus study that details that information and applies a schedule over a 5-year period.
so those funds, are they allocated to our water fund? Is that where that
Correct.
money
They
goes?
go into water enterprise only.
Water enterprise.
They can only be used for water only.
Okay. Very good. And just last statement, if you haven't already, get out and vote, folks.
Thank you. Councilman Stroman.
Just wanted to say thanks for considering my idea, even though it seemed a little crazy. Appreciate the feedback. Appreciate the discussion tonight. Staff, thanks for allowing or being open-minded enough to consider the local nonprofits for the CDBG funds. I know this isn't the last meeting, Dominique, but we appreciate everything that you've done the last 8 years for the city of Escalon. And yeah, don't forget to vote tomorrow.
Councilman Walker.
Yeah, so I I did have a question, but it was clarified with staff and with Jeremy there. This water rate increase, there was a question from the community today. That is an increase that was council approved 5 years ago for 5 consecutive years of increase. And this should be the 5th year. So that'll come off after this year, and then it'll have to be go through council again.
It doesn't
So
come
that's-
off. It just
Sorry, it does,
increase.
it does not continue to
Continue,
increase
correct.
after this year. This is the last of 5 increases from 5 years ago when, yeah.
Just to provide a little bit additional information, it was a water increase, and then there was also an increase to the garbage rate.
Okay.
The garbage rate is in accordance with our franchise agreement with Jilton, who is our refuse provider. And so they have a contract with the city that was approved a few years ago, that they are allowed to have up to a 2.5% CPI increase. And so the garbage rate was 2.5%. And anything more than that, they have to come to council for approval. And so they're capped at 2.5% for CPI. And that's annually.
That's, I mean, that
That would be
goes
annually,
every
correct.
year.
Yeah,
annually
every
to
year
100%.
they calculate it from April to March of the previous years, and then they send it to us to apply to the billing.
And then the only other thing, I just want to say thank you, Dominique. I commend you for making the best choice for your family, and it has been a pleasure to work with you. I've appreciated working with you for this past year, and so it will be very different, but thank you so much for everything you've done. That's it.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd just like to encourage our community to go ahead and look into some of the social groups and see if you can't help some of these social groups, with participation. You can really help your community by just donating a few hours, whether it's the Lions clubs or, club or any other club for that matter. As far as Councilman Stroman, I don't want you to feel bad about your idea. It's always a good thing to throw your new ideas out there, see where they go. I like I think your intention is to bring the community together. So I don't think that's something that you should hang your hat on or hang your head on. I think it's something that we should all be trying to put more attention towards. I guess kudos to that. And obviously, seeing Dominique leave here soon, I know you're doing the right thing for your family, so, as much as we want to see you around, it is what it is, So we do appreciate your service to our town, though. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. I'll keep it quick and echo the same sentiments. Thank you for all the hard work you've done. It's been great working with you. Don't be a stranger. We'll still call you once in a while, just see how you're doing and see what's going on there. Hats off to all the programs out there that are doing what they do for our community. We thank you for all of that. Baseball weekend again, bring that back up on Saturday, opening day. Let's all hope for some great weather. No rain at least. Cold's all right, just no rain hopefully. Hopefully have good ball fields looking good. No rain the night before to hurt us on the playing aspect of that. Look for that. And as everybody else has echoed, get out there and vote. Your vote matters. Without it, you can't complain and can't say. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us.